bringing you inside the USL Championship and League One.
Segmer's got there, Marquinhos! He's been knocking on the door! He knocks it down!
Diving into all the biggest stories and top headlines.
You are ripping and roaring today.
This is USL All Access.
It's almost impossible to recreate that level of magic.
With Mike Watts and Devon Kerr on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of USL All Access. Very happy Tuesday evening. As this week, you can look forward to some commentary around the Open Cup, comments about other people's commentary about the Open Cup, big results of big games to come in the round of 16, and, of course, action around the league and a handful of both transfers and re-signings that could lead to transfers. It's all coming up this week. Joined by Devon Kerr, Mike Watts, Emmett McConnell is at the controls as ever. Devon, I see you've gone with the old school Swope Park Rangers kit today.
Is that a question, or are you making a statement because you like the kit? I'm scrolling down so everybody can see it a little bit better.
A little bit of both.
You ready? Can you guess who's on the back of this? And you're not gonna, don't guess one of the big names. You're gonna know the player. No, not one of the big names.
We could spend the entire show with this. Yeah.
Jalen Lindsay.
I like that.
It's a good kit. I love this kit, man. It's so comfortable. It's airy. Love running in it. Fits well. Got off the call. I know we're going to talk about this in a second, but got off the call with Ben Olsen and Houston Dynamo because I've got them midweek against Austin. He just looked at me and he goes, Devon, what the, what are you wearing? He couldn't see the top. He thought I had a Houston training top on.
Amazing.
I was already in trouble because I ran on the field to give him a hug a couple of weeks back. He's like, what are you doing on my field? And I then showed him the jersey, and he was like, oh, that's a solid kit. And he gave me credit. So I'm giving myself a little credit. I think this is a good one out of the vault.
I appreciate that. And look at you diving on the grenade just like Ben Olsen did. We'll get to him in just a moment. Let's start with a couple of results from the weekend and some things we have our eyes on within the league. Congratulations to El Paso. Winless no more. Now, to be fair, they did it to Loudoun, who aren't exactly in a rich vein of form themselves. It's 2-0. We now have nobody left in the league that hasn't gotten a 3-point performance yet. El Paso may already be out of the playoff race at this rate. I'm not quite ready to say that they're done. But the reality is it was going to get mighty close to too late to save Brian Clairhout's job. We were getting really close to that.
You think we're getting close, or we are there?
I think this will prolong it. Now we find out whether or not they can get on a run coming off of it. Scored in the first minute of it, which is a good start. What do you make of it?
I think you've been drinking something at lunch that's inappropriate on a Tuesday to think that we're not out of this yet if you're an El Paso fan or a player. You can't. You and I talk about this all the time. We don't wish poorly upon anyone. We want good form. We want good goals. But you cannot go 10 games into a season with just one win. You can't go 9 and not have any and then have one in the 10th and all of a sudden, everything's all rosy and perfume and all that jazz again. No chance, dude. That's the hottest seat in the USL Championship right now. I'd argue it's the hottest seat in North America. We're going to compare leagues in a minute, but it's just with that roster, that fan base, their success in the past, what they're capable of. Dude, they went 12 games unbeaten at one point in time last year. You and I had them when they were 10 games unbeaten for the national game. There is football to be played there, and this ain't it. And yes, it concerns me that it is against a Loudoun team that is on kind of a downslide, if you will, that the weather was absolute crap. I can say that word here. It was terrible. But look, that's the negative side. The positive side, I believe in them. I believe that the players are there, that they can go and get results. But one win is not good enough to get it done. You got to keep going. This has to be, to save his job, I'm talking 4 or 5 games at least with positive results.
Right. I understand that. I'm saying this prolonged it. Thankfully, everything on the shelf is still capped at this stage. Look, you host Memphis. You have to win that game. We're at that point now. Those are games you have to win. And I know how many home games they've already pissed away. At Charleston, I don't know
Loss.
that anyone's going there and getting points.
Not at this rate.
Okay, Birmingham at home, San Antonio on the road. You probably have to have that. Phoenix at home. You probably have to have that.
At
That's
Oakland,
the
have
point
to
they're
have
at
that.
now. Right.
Yeah.
That's where we're at now with El Paso. The reality is, that we talked about this briefly last week. This all started last year. Let's not act.
Yep.
It started like June 15th last year and has continued for close to a year. And that's the problem. There is enough talent there to make a dent. The playoff, right, eight teams, the West looks weak. That's why I'm saying I'm not ready to say it's signed, sealed, delivered.
So those 6 games, here's where I view it. If they can get to Rhode Island on June 26th, my eyes defeated me there for a second. If they can get to Rhode Island, they've got a 2-game stretch, and I would argue a little bit of a break considering they've also got Miami in that conversation. That's 6 games between now and then, coming off a win. In your opinion, how many points or wins, 2 different things, do they need out of those 6 games?
9 or 10 points minimum.
Minimum. I think you're being
minimum.
Yeah, that's
Charleston is nothing, right? Like, okay, take 3 off the board. Now out of 15, how many do you need?
Memphis, Birmingham, Oakland have to be a guaranteed 9.
Yep.
Charleston ain't happening. And you've got 2 left. At San Antonio, home Phoenix. Your best chance in theory is home Phoenix. In theory. So I'm with you. I think it's 12 guaranteed. If he gets 12, he keeps his job. I hope he does. Truly. We
had him on the show last year and honestly enjoyed that quite a bit.
He was great. And you and I can both agree that I don't want to use the word they're a historic club, but their relevance in the USL Championship Western Conference since they've come in has been pretty impressive since 19. Loved everything we've seen out of them.
They spend to compete.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is not a roster put together with, baling wire.
But all of a sudden,
this thing is real.
But all of a sudden, in the last 2 years, we've got, remember the Richie Ryan debacle after Mark Lowry left?
Yep.
When, oh my goodness, why is my mind?
Hutch.
Thank you very much. Hutchinson was there. There was the Richie Ryan thing. They've had 2 coaches now. This is 2 in 3 years. Richie Ryan's gone, obviously, coaching and doing that stuff. Like, I went and looked online. Last thing. Do you realize the 8th Notch has not tweeted about anything, their supporters group, since December of 2023? Wow. And that fan base is
loud.
Yeah, in the best of ways. Have a ton of respect for them, love them. Shocked that it's gotten to that point. Okay, let's talk about something fun.
Before we get there, Loudon, 4 winless now.
I'm
concerned.
Good. No, weather for sure. I think we've seen good enough play throughout the games themselves that I'm not overly worried. You got to get some more momentum out of the team for sure. I get that, but like you don't need a deep dive on them. Could it continue this way? Of course, we've seen it in the past. But given what I've seen on the field of play, I'm not worried.
I will say this. Look at the Eastern Conference, right? Top 8 make it. In theory, Pittsburgh and Tampa, their worst is behind them, I would think.
Yeah.
So they're 6-7. Okay, it's Hartford, Rhode Island, Loudoun, North Carolina, Miami, all fighting for one spot. Maybe Birmingham drops, maybe Indy drops, but even then they've got a 5-point jump. I know we're a third of the way, not even through the season. I'm just throwing out. We're starting to see that stratification occur right now.
Do you realize that? I get it. They're unbeaten through 10 games. We'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
But even if you drop down to Louisville, like Charleston's on 24, Rhode Island is on 9.
Yep.
Loudoun's on 8. Charleston have lapped the field twice when it comes to points. Loudoun at 8 or below, which includes North Carolina and Miami. I mean, that's something, man. We are seeing some clear separation of church and state there.
Yep. Dev, let's chat about that Battery team and indeed some fun times. So the Battery do advance in the Open Cup for one. They'll see Atlanta. We'll talk about that later. That's in 2 weeks, about a week and a half now. 10th team in Open Cup history now. It's a week from now. It's a week from like 2 hours ago. Time's a flat circle. The Battery, 10th team in the championship to ever start 10 unbeaten, 7 wins, 3 draws. Gaudy goal difference. They've already got their marquee win against Louisville in the Eastern Conference final rematch. You want to talk about lapping the field. I know we keep talking about this. It's because it continues to be a story. Largely healthy now. They're on the verge of having a small roster be completely healthy. And boy, they're clicking. It's fun.
A friendly reminder, by the way, Sacramento Republic could also join them if they win their 10th, if they get a win or a draw in their 10th as their 9 unbeaten. It's beautiful, man. Honestly. Nick Marcanic, now that we've gotten that out of the way. What a back and forth that was between the two organizations. It was a joy to have last week. We've obviously spoken with Lee Cohen and Ben Pierman a couple of times, and the roster that they've been able to assemble in a very short time frame, mind you. Friendly reminder that Lee Cohen didn't step foot into this organization until the fall of 2022. So we're not even 24 months into his tenure, yet alone Ben Pierman coming there, and he had success prior. I mean, I don't want to use the word unfathomable, but it is nearing that point of what they have done, what they continue to do, and the company that they're keeping right now in terms of 10 games unbeaten, the 10th team in USL Championship history, as you mentioned, to start the year, 10 games unbeaten. Let's talk about some of the teams that they're joining. Of course, everybody's chasing the Richmond Kickers of 2013, who started the year 22 games unbeaten. Friendly reminder that Richmond Kickers team also won the title to close out 2012. Rochester Rhinos of 2015, title-winning team. Orlando City of 2014 didn't win the title. They won the regular season. San Antonio of 2017. Woo! It's not too shabby of a squad. Bailed in the Western Conference semis, if I'm not mistaken, in 17, Michael. Correct me if I'm wrong there. The Tampa Bay Rowdies of 2019. I wasn't surprised by this because I remember the start to their year. I bet, so they went 13 games unbeaten. If you told me they were 7-0-6, I wouldn't have been surprised. Remember how many draws they had? It was just kind of there and nipping things out. The San Antonio team of 2011, start of the modern era, and the Charleston Battery of 2024. So a couple of title-winning teams, couple of teams that took first overall, historic in terms of what they were able to do, what could happen. And as you said, we're not trying to do it on purpose. It's just they're that good and they keep doing it for themselves. The story writes itself, right?
Yeah. That's where we're at with Charleston right now, for sure. Again, they are a couple of injuries away from big questions. They're built to be small but mighty. But right now, they're completely, all systems go.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to the comments from Ben Olsen, let's hit a couple of re-signings and a transfer as well. Start with Elijah Wynder, extended last week, Louisville City midfielder, multi-year deal. That midfield looks excellent. Wynder must be running legit 15 kilometers a game. And they're actually pretty well-run miles. They're miles where you go like he has no idea where he's going. That's not the world he's living in. I know there's going to be MLS interest. I know at this stage there has been interest from overseas. The direction which they decide to go is going to be interesting, for one, because obviously his brother did in fact make the jump over to Benfica. For a guy who broke his leg in just a malicious way 3 years ago, it looked like it completely stunted his career. The fact that we're talking about comeback player of the year, that's great. The fact he's become one of the better box-to-box guys in the championship at 21 is unbelievable. So, yeah, he got extended. It probably, right, lends itself to setting up a better fee for the club on the way out. It also gets him paid right now.
I don't know if I can add any more to it because you just encompassed everything. I mean, he's honestly like, I'm with you. To see a guy whose words from his then head coach John Hackworth, the leader of Louisville, when they brought him up to the first team, albeit on an academy loan, was turning into a legit player, sky's the limit. To go from that to beyond the basement, I mean, truly having to walk through the depths of hell as a person, most importantly, a young man going through that, like, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, yet alone a professional athlete who's in the prime of their career, 27, 28, 29. You're talking about a young man. I mean, he was tiny. He's a little kid. Didn't know anything else, right? He's a grown man now who takes over games and does everything that is asked of him and then more. And I'm not going to be surprised when he leaves. I'm just curious where it is, because I think there's so many different ways that his game fits into teams' models, right? Like, he's a guy that could, if you stayed in the United States and wanted to play in MLS, like, he could go play for Jim Curtin in the Diamond, right? He could go play for Red Bull in a 2-2-2, right? You could play a 3-back system and he can play wing back. Not that you want to use him there, but more importantly, you could jump him onto that, like the double tens on a front three. Like, he can do everything, but he can play fast. He can play slow. My question is whether or not he stays stateside. I think he'll leave. I think he goes across the pond.
I think you're right. One more thing to add, and I love this. It would be very easy to look at your younger brother living your dream while you're going through a personal nightmare.
And play the woe is me card, right?
Yeah, it would have been so easy. And yet all I ever heard from the coaching staff, from PR, from other players, no one could have been a bigger cheerleader for Josh than Elijah was. That's really, really cool. They were attached at the hip. I'd love to see him make the move to Europe and ultimately both sort of achieve that ultimate dream. Here's the other one. Nate Worth hasn't played all that much in the championship for FC Tulsa. And here he is getting a transfer at 17 years young to go to Tampa Bay, where I don't know that they really have all that much room for Nate Worth in their lineup anyways. It's a really fascinating transfer in a vacuum to me. What do you make of it?
Well, I would say this. I think you have to start with the initial coup that was Tulsa getting him to begin with. Now, that's Sam Dorr's doing, the brainchild of FC Tulsa that started to turn this thing around, right? It was the rebrand, then it was Sam Dorr and Blair Gavin. So going to get him to begin with was an interesting one. The Red Bull organization, I don't want to say didn't value him, but valued him in a different way that didn't necessarily include pushing him into the two-team ranks. I get that. Really good example of a player named Sam Williams, who plays at the holding midfielder spot for Carlos Zamorano in the University of North Carolina Tar Heels. Kind of the same thing. And that kid had an opportunity to go pro in a couple of spots, not with the Red Bull. He chose the collegiate route instead. The difference there to me was the profile for Nate was already on the national landscape, whereas that kid Sam was kind of within USL Championship ranks. At that point in time, by the way, Sam was the record holder for an academy player with USL Championship minutes. And I don't think that was in the Red Bull system. I think that was league-wide. I don't know if that record still stands, but obviously valued within the organization and good enough to play there. Nate is at the national team, though. Sam wasn't at the national team. So the value of yourself, like league-wide, nationwide, is much different. More scouts, more eyeballs, and certainly the talent is there. I have a fear for Nate because of what you just mentioned. They obviously went and got him for a reason, because they believe in it, certainly as a business transaction, but as a player as well. He's walking a very interesting line of not getting minutes, not getting reps. More importantly, Mike, not developing. I don't care how good of a player you are, how well you train. I'll never forget one of the managers I had growing up. His name was Richard Cardoza. And I was at a point in time where I was playing up, 2-3 age groups. And he used to always say to me, "You are the best freaking player on this team in training. And when I put you on the field, you stink." And there was like a 4 to 6 week window where he was right. I couldn't get on the field because the opportunities that I was given, I went out and I was terrible. It was a mental thing for me. Did I belong there? Of course I did, because I proved it in training all week long. I was given the opportunity to begin with, but then I went and trained really well. I want to see Nate be given the opportunity on a consistent basis to start to continue to develop this story. Because if we don't see more of him, this is going to be, while it's not because of injury like the Wynders, right, that you were just referencing and we were talking about, this is going to be a spot where Nate sort of quietly fades into the night. He's got to find a way to go there, get some confidence, and push through on that team. This bouncing organization to organization is not good for the development of a young man.
I'm also going to make one other, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with this. Think about the Jonathan Gomez to Louisville move out of Dallas. He wasn't going to get time there. Louisville, at the time, right, 2020, maybe he'll get in the Open Cup. The reality is, out of COVID, he's essentially their starting outside back. And the rest, as they say, is history. The reality is the coaching staff is what sold him on the move.
Bingo.
The coaching staff in Tulsa was not the same.
No.
The rumor was that Jonathan Gomez had a trigger in his deal related to John Hackworth remaining in Louisville. And you might go, wow, that sounds like a poison pill the coach would put in. No, it's probably a poison pill from the player to make sure that the person who promised their future development was their responsibility needs to be there, because if not, they need to go somewhere where they will get that time. You are not an asset. You are a development at that point in time commodity.
And out of respect to the player, Nate Worth, I agree with you 100%, but also the vision of what is FC Tulsa now compared to 12 months ago, two very different things. That's not a knock on Mario Sanchez or everybody else in the front office. They just want to win in a different way, and I don't necessarily think that included Nate Worth. Fine.
No, not right now.
Got it.
All right. We've gone pretty deep, pretty far. We will actually step aside here in just a moment. Before we do so, quick update on Rodrigo and Roman Lopez. They did post an update on Sunday. It was their second update. Surgery for Roman, the 9-year-old son of Sacramento midfielder Rodrigo Lopez, is on Wednesday, the 15th. It'll be at the UCLA Medical Center. They're going to Disneyland. Believe today. Pre-op is today, 10:15 this morning. Mark Briggs called last week and told Rodrigo, you're not traveling to Rhode Island, which a lot of credit to him, because sometimes I'm going to leave it up to the player. Sometimes you just need to tell the player, and that's what Mark did. At this point, all appears good to go. $35,000 raised for that heart surgery and for the recovery and allowing the family to focus on that. That's huge. In USL Championship terms, you're talking for a lot of players half a year's salary right there. I mean, it's a huge difference, and good to everyone to do it. It's worth noting 2-2 draw on the weekend between Sacramento and Rhode Island. Hard point on the road. The entire speech from Mark Briggs, play for Roman. They got a 90+1 equalizer from Jonathan Ricketts. If you don't think that brought some tears to some eyes, my God. All right, when we come back, Open Cup recap. Ben Olsen. A lot about Ben Olsen. It's when we come back on USL All Access.
Let's get back to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back to USL All Access on this Tuesday night. Miss any part of the show, it is available on the SiriusXM app or tomorrow in living color on the USL YouTube page. There was a game earlier tonight on SiriusXM FC. We talked a little bit about Loudoun earlier. I'm sure they cruised to a 10-0 win. I have no idea what the result is. This is pre-taped. Dev, let's chat about the Open Cup, which is another reason we'll be pre-taping next week. The biggest result on its face right off the bat, it was plastered all over the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Here's Detroit comedian John Glazer getting up, throwing the double bird and saying, "Up yours, Houston," wearing all Detroit City gear. They're zooming in on this dude's socks. He's wearing shorts on the Tonight Show. Johnny Carson's rolling in his urn. Wild. 2-2 Detroit over Houston. It was 2-0. I was calling that game. I thought that thing was dead. I thought it was done. We were talking a minute before the wonder goal from Williams, right before halftime. Like, get to the locker room. Hector Herrera is going to come off and give it the college try in the second half. And a slide tackle that should have been a foul, I'm surprised it's not a foul, led to this 35-yard. It is a brilliant hit. Rainbow of a goal. Suddenly you're back within one. You end up equalizing late. You go to penalties. 22 of them. It comes down to the goalkeepers. You've decided you're not going to play Steinwasher, so it's Carlos Saldana who steps up, saves the pen, then cashes in the winner, a really good winner. Detroit over Houston. The reigning champ are out 2-2 and 9-8 in pens. Do you want to talk about the game or you want to talk about the post game? Or both?
I'll give my comments on the game briefly, and then we'll talk about post game, which was actually
more entertaining.
It was post game, but we didn't hear the comments till the next day. Game itself, Houston should have done better with the opportunities that they had. They were the better team. They didn't finish out their chances, and it came back to bite them. Detroit did everything that they had to try and hang on. And you're right, it was a foul. Shouldn't have been the goal. Whatever. That's not Detroit's fault that the referee didn't blow the whistle. Incredible goal. The second half, to me, regardless of personnel, Houston looked disinterested in the game, and the doubt was certainly just taking steps along the way. When it went to overtime, I was not shocked whatsoever, regardless of the fact that it went to penalties, that Detroit won. They're resilient. That organization has always been, and certainly in those situations, like the 1-8 last year against Pittsburgh, right? They find ways to do it. And they, at the close of the game, they were the better team to close things out. Then Ben Olsen stepped in.
Let me jump in here real quick.
Yeah,
Worth noting, Detroit get Indy in the next round. On paper, San Antonio, Houston was going to give you your Texas derby that everyone wanted. And Detroit and Indy both, in theory, score an upset. Let me add this on Ben Olsen first, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on this. His first comments in the presser were, the referee stunk, but that's not why we lost today.
Agreed.
So before we even get to the question part, that was part of the opening monologue. He was correct on both fronts.
Reminder.
What else did Ben have to say?
Well, to start, hang on that opening comment. Let's pay some credit here. Not only the ref, just prior to that, the first thing Ben Olsen did was come in and say, first of all, congratulations to Detroit City. He didn't complain about the ref to start. He didn't complain about his poor performance by his team. He gave a tip of the cap to the victors, and he was right to do so. Like, Detroit hung around. You give anybody a chance like that, I don't care what the opposition is, and they're going to find a way to beat you. And Detroit did that. And he said, listen, they were resilient. They sat back. They took a ton of pressure, and they got their special moments. That's what this is. I've heard it from Peter Vermees. He talked about the Open Cup as well. I heard the same thing from Brian Schmetzer a couple of weeks back in his press conference about what the Open Cup could be. You let anybody hang around in these games, and that's what's going to happen to you. The problem with all of this was Ben Olsen then went on, and he was asked a question about basically the gap between MLS and USL Championship, and if there is, in fact, a gap. And, Mike, do you have the direct quote in front of you? If you do, I'll let you read it. If you don't, I'm happy to paraphrase. So, basically what Ben Olsen said was, yes, the reporter led him, and he said, yes, it's a second division, referencing the USL Championship. And then Ben Olsen said, and it's not even close. This is where he got himself into trouble and where Twitter went into a frenzy. So, do you want me to keep going and give my opinion, or do you want to comment upon Ben Olsen's comments first?
Yeah, I want to make one or two comments because I called this game and I spoke to Ben Olsen about 36 hours before this. For one, and he said the same thing last year. Quote, we should have lost to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was better than us. They blanked the bed in front of goal. No business not scoring a few. Last year, he described, we had no business beating Tampa Bay. Let's not act like Ben Olsen, who's been a head coach for a decade in MLS, multiple trophies, is unaware of the Open Cup. He won it as a player, and he's won it as a coach for multiple organizations. Let's dispel that theory now. He gave plenty of credit to Detroit and an acknowledgement. For one, he said, quote, USL is going in the right direction as MLS is. They have real, capable players, many of whom could be on this roster, no problem. Full acknowledgement. That was his comment pregame about Detroit. The other thing I'm going to say, because you mentioned it, the reporter led it. The reporter ponders in his question, do you think the USL is really a second division? What kind of question is that? Genuinely. And I'm not here to try and parse words. I don't ask questions in press conferences. I'm really not trying to be that guy, and I'm not trying to shame anybody. The reality is, if you're Ben Olsen and you just lost to Detroit in 11 rounds of pens, how are you supposed to answer that? Of course it's literally a second division. There is a pyramid, and they are one level down. That, like, Hector Herrera makes as much money every year as the entire Detroit City roster. Oh. That's not a knock on anybody. That's just reality, man.
I'll take it a step further. Hector Herrera, and I'm going off his 2023 numbers, which Hector Herrera grossed $5,246,875.
That's half the Eastern Conference.
Ready for this? Forget the roster. I can't tell you the specific numbers because I want to keep my job. But if you want to do some math here and give you an idea, operating budget, Mike. When I say budget, I mean housing, I mean insurance, food, travel, wages, not just on the field, people in the front office. 5.2 million, what Hector made, just over 5.2 million. That's kind of like that there are teams that are budgeted with that number for the whole organization for the whole year. So where Ben got himself into trouble, and I'm pretty sure Ben Olsen would tell you this, is that he was emotional about it. He gets emotional after games, and he didn't mean to direct it as in just playing. Okay? Yeah, it's a second division, and that's okay, first off. There's nothing wrong with that. All right? When it comes to player salaries, when it comes to stadiums, training facilities, any asset whatsoever within an MLS organization, 100% of the time, it trumps USL Championship. That's not a bad thing. It's a second division. It's different. As you and I are talking right now, and I tried to think about this before we came on, the only player who was regularly picking up minutes as a starter, mind you, listen to that right there, as a starter, is Fidel Barajas. As a starter. You can turn it. Go ahead, think about it. Go team to team.
I literally don't know what that meant.
I'm saying
the only player out of the
I meant a USL Championship player that's a regular starter this year.
Okay.
That's what I meant by that. Sorry. Fidel Barajas. We're talking about what most people think as a generational player, right? Certainly within the USL Championship conversation. And he's the only one. Not even Diego Luna. For $250,000 a couple years ago.
Who made the jump.
As a player who
Aaron
made
Long.
the jump. Michael, you're talking about an academy player from 2016. Okay. I don't mean that.
Was not an academy player. Came to Red Bull at 23 years old.
I'm talking on an academy team. I'm talking about now.
Okay.
I'm talking about now, right now. All right.
All right.
I care for both leagues a lot, and I care for the lack of understanding of what they are. People are naive to think that, and I don't mean this bad. There's good that's going to come out of this conversation in a second. People are naive to think that a USL Championship team on a regular basis, that's important that you take that you heed that, everyone at home, could compete in MLS. Yes. Do I think that they could beat an MLS team with the right circumstances? Just ask Detroit City. Detroit just played the game of their life against a pretty heavily loaded Houston team. I'll give them that. But it took everything to go wrong for Houston and penalties after overtime in order for them to get a result. Put them in a 34-game season, a USL Championship team, the best one, Charleston Battery, Louisville, might win 3 games. Might. Now, where I do believe the comments turned into something good, and I think it can continue to be something good, and I know you'll agree with me on this, Mike, is I think the lack of acknowledgement for the talent at the USL Championship level, for those that have the capability to make the jump, is far more than what people are actually giving it now. I'm not saying every single player, but there are players within these organizations. Yes, they're probably going to be a squad player. Do I think at the right age they could develop into a starter? Abso-freaking-lutely. But for some reason, that thought process has been closed off by MLS. I'm not here to fight that battle. I'm here to tell you that I do think there are players that can more frequently make that jump. But for you to think that a team can regularly compete against these teams, it's apples and oranges. It's unfair. It's just the teams don't have the same abilities because of the financial resources. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's obvious, and I think everyone's going to
not for everybody running their mouths on Twitter, like the idiotic comments that are running around everybody. They're all upset about Ben Olsen making one comment. They may think it's obvious, but they're not saying that. They're upset about what he said. I get it. Think big picture and use your brain. That's what I want people to do. Stop complaining about trying to throw something on the wall and make it stick. Think about what his actual content was. They took his content or his comment out of context. And while I don't think he depicted it appropriately, there's substance to it.
And I will say this. Anyone who's going like, well, Ben would be relegated multiple times over at DC United.
Oh, my God.
DC United wasn't playing. They were playing budget-wise to be in that position.
Yeah.
Benny Ball existed because he did not have resources.
That
was where they played at RFK for a long time in that dilapidated. I walked into I met rats. We had conversations in the tunnels of RFK the year after they left, or the year they were leaving.
What a venue that place was.
Amazing on a million levels. But,
yeah.
You know, like, let's all be really clear about what it was there. And then he had essentially carte blanche to start over in Houston. They go win a trophy, reach the playoffs. So let's dispel that too. I understand everyone being ticked off about it.
Yeah.
I do. When you only see that one quote and you take and blow that into a whole bowl of popcorn. I heard what he said on, was it Monday going into Tuesday? I heard the full extent of the comments. I watched the game. I called the game. Credit Detroit.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's an awesome moment. Also, you do not have a winning record against MLS teams. That was a draw. That was officially
a draw with that advanced on a draw that advanced on penalties.
Yes. I'm just saying FIFA says
you
now have a 500 record.
I wasn't going to bring
MLS
them
teams.
into this. This is coming from the same fan base that got mad at me because I didn't include Trevor James, which is winning percentage because they played in a different league. I mean, come on. My high school rival won a national championship. They went 27 games undefeated. Do you think I'm adding that to his professional record when he coached in the pros? No.
Well, yeah,
I have a brain.
Pep Guardiola.
I have a brain.
Okay. Because it was Pep. All right. Dev, let's you good?
I'm good. And I will say the only thing I'll say to you is this. I think that game made the most headlines because of what it said. But to tie the two stories together, the biggest result on the weekend on the midweekend Open Cup was New Mexico United over Real Salt Lake. I didn't hear anybody running their mouth about New Mexico and their ability to compete in MLS because they just beat the number one team in the Western Conference. Funny how that works, right? By the way, Zico Bailey, hats off, man. They should have been up 4-0 after his 2 braces. They were so good to start this game, man. And this kid, mind you, what are the numbers in front of you? I got to pull them up here because my computer's on. There we go. I was so dormant from looking at my stats on the computer with my anger addressed towards some people, the soccer landscape overall. And I'll get to that in the potpourri, by the way, that I forgot to look at it. Zico Bailey, 77 appearances at the pro level, only 3 professional goals, and he scored 2 and 2 minutes. Bangers, I might add, from outside the 18, 4 out of the 6 goals, almost from outside the yard. And we talked about Diego Luna earlier. He had a nice one. The touch by Fidel Barajas to the bottom corner. I mean, chef's kiss. Magic.
Wasn't it fun seeing them back for a minute?
I mean,
I know.
We obviously had Diego Luna longer than Fidel Barajas, but man, there's a reason why they went. I mean, they're good, man. Those guys can play. They can play ball. I never really liked the cut on the calves on the back of the socks from Diego Luna when he was playing in El Paso, but 50% of the players in this country decide they need to do it, and apparently 50% of the time it works every time. So
I found out that wasn't a style choice this week.
Oh no.
I thought that was like, oh, everyone else is doing it, like, having cut up jeans. I did not know that was supposed to relieve pressure on your calves in relation to cramps.
Oh, and give it better air. Yeah, it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right. Dev, let's chat about a couple other results while we're at it. Tulsa and Pittsburgh actually went back-to-back. Tulsa 1-0, knocked Pittsburgh out last year. They made the quarterfinal full, and I mean 100% squad rotation from Bob Lilly and the Riverhounds. They know that the 3 losses to start the year is they'd rather have a home playoff game than beat Tulsa and play another game in 2 weeks and potentially mess up 5 league games over this. That's where Pittsburgh was at. Goodrum ends up scoring the winner in that, then turns around and misses 2 pens on the weekend in what resoundingly was a 2-2 Riverhounds comeback draw in the league. Dallas defeat Memphis 1-0. San Jose win the battle of the town 1-0. Johnny Rodriguez, congrats, my dude. That was not what you needed in the 82nd minute, Dev. That's the wrong way to do it.
I don't know what he was doing, man. I felt look, it's one of the few times, and he's an emotional player. I've seen him go after people, and I know what it looks like when a player has an intention. I don't think he was trying to do that looking at the video. I saw it live. I watched it back a couple of times. I don't think it was malicious in nature, but he still shouldn't have put himself in that position. They were right there. I would argue they were the better team. It was close, very close. I would argue they were the better team, but you can't do that, man. You were only down 1-0. You had a chance.
Yep. 2 other results we're going to just briefly touch on. Tampa Bay. Oh, my God. It was 4-0 with 15 minutes to go. 4-4, extra time, 6-4 Rowdies. They let Birmingham right back into that thing. That is embarrassing.
Yeah, it was much better than the 1-0 on the weekend.
Yeah, wild.
Terrible game management to close it out. That simple.
Yep.
You don't need to say anything else.
No. Sack 2, Monterey, nothing. Own goal, and then Kieran Phillips just keeps bagging goals. Great start for them. Seattle 1-0 over Louisville. I was in Seattle last week, and I called this game. Those are actually unrelated. I called the game in Seattle from Fort Lauderdale.
Took me a second, even though I knew your travel schedule.
I went to Starfire out of pure homage to history. Holy smokes, that is the smallest postage stamp of a field I've ever seen. I always thought it was twice as big a venue. It's a concession stand and 2 bleachers. It is wild. Sold out 3,500 tickets. That's it. All that to say, there's some Louisville fans going, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? We lost the Seattle reserves. I get all that. Danny Mazovsky was all league in the championship. All right, that was the striker. Danny Leyva was clearly going to be a star when he was coming out of championship. Dylan Tevez, same deal. I understand they rotated. Again, all those guys would be starting anywhere they want in the championship. Every last one of them. The 5 academy guys they brought in, one from Cote d'Ivoire probably was the best player on the field that night, Georgie. The other 4 3 of them came off the bench. That was a hell of a performance by Louisville. And if Tosh bangs his penalty in spot kicks and that goes 8 rounds, who the hell knows? They may have walked right through Seattle. But wow, that was a fun game. Also, Dev, you called your Owls fell to Sporting Kansas City. I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah, they had their chances. The game was very similar to what Detroit and Houston was. And they scored early, scored on the counter, good pressure. To be fair, the level of disinterest, the word that I used for Houston in the second half, was basically Sporting the entire game, and Sporting got lucky. They did. They got very, very lucky. And Peter Vermees acknowledged that they probably should have done better, and just said that they were excited to move on. And if you're Dom Casciato, I felt for the team, thought that they deserved better out of the match. They couldn't finish their chances though.
Not enough.
No.
All right. When we come back, quick look at the weekend around the championship. We've also got potpourri in the mailbag. It's all coming up here on USL All Access.
You're listening to USL All Access on SiriusXM FC. Here are your hosts, Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back to USL All Access with Devon Kerr, Mike Watts. Miss a part of the show, want to catch the extended version, it's all on the USL YouTube page tomorrow. Also available on the SiriusXM app. Good time for us to mention Emmett McConnell, still our favorite. Love this guy. Appreciate you. All right, Dev, let's dig into this. Plenty to talk about from the weekend. We've spotlighted a couple games. Louisville battle back after the Open Cup defeat. I was actually at training on Thursday. They were flying, man. A lot of, everyone understood how bad it hurt. They paid a lot of money to get back on a charter flight, knowing that Orange County was a big game. And they get a 2-0 win. Wilson Harris scores again. Louisville right back at the top. Charleston was off on the weekend, and now these sides are only 3 points apart. The East is shaping up, isn't it?
It's running away from everyone.
I know. It's like those two. Can anyone hang with them? Or is it going to be a 2-horse race?
Okay, hang on. Well, I do believe it's going to be a 2-horse race, and they're going to be 1-2. Right. I do believe that at their best, yeah, I could see it from the Rowdies. I'm telling you, I even think there's talent enough on Indy to go and chase. I mean, that's the brilliance of American soccer and the way that they set up in playoffs is you get yourself into a postseason berth, and you got to find a way to win over one match, right?
Yep.
It's also it's kind of the detriment of all the work that you put in all year long. And interestingly enough, Wilfred Nancy, the head coach of the Columbus Crew, said it that he looked at, and this is the guy who won MLS Cup last year, said that he thought FC Cincinnati were the winners because over 34 games, they were the best. So, yeah, I mean, in the East, absolutely. Same conversation in the West, like Sack and give them a run for their money.
Yep. Burke Bowl concludes 2-0 to Colorado Springs. My city, my team, Switchbacks FC. The 2-0 win for the Switchbacks. All of a sudden, here they come. Couple wins in the last few weeks. New Mexico continues their winning ways. Greg Hurst right off the bat. Akale scores the winner. New Mexico outpassed them by 180 in that game. New Mexico dominates Oakland 2-1. CBS SN. Phoenix and Detroit. It was at Detroit. Bro, Ryan Flood just played the 9 in a professional soccer match. Like, I blew my mind. Ben Morris in the 9th minute. Equalizer in the 49th, 1-1.
It's certainly an interesting choice for Phoenix, though he did score 14 goals in 37 appearances with Harbs when he was in Ireland, and they moved him into the striker position a couple of times. Yeah. I asked Phoenix Rising about this behind the scenes, about why the decision, how this worked out, and how they thought it could play out. Remember, wicked left foot, lightning quick. Not that surprising in this matchup of a game that was a pretty good game overall in the sense of ball possession, their ability to kind of weave between these segmented areas for each squad. I didn't feel like either team ran away with the opportunities. Didn't think the opportunities in the final third were that great anyway, nor did anyone miss any real, like, massive chances. Like, the draw was fair. And just to backtrack for a second, I know you said that New Mexico United dominated Oakland. Respectfully, I watched the game. Thought Oakland was actually the better team. Chances, for Oakland, better. Yeah, they didn't have the same amount of possession or touches and stuff. We got good work rate out of New Mexico United, but if it wasn't for Blanchett's mistake, Oakland could have been right there, and they probably could have won that game.
And that's probably one of, two mistakes Paul Blanchett's going to make all year.
Bingo.
Comes with the territory.
Bingo.
Also, to your point, Indy 3-1 at Miami. It's coming. Augie Williams, brace in 4 minutes.
One more thing for Phoenix. Sorry, got to backtrack here. You can step in and then take us to break. One other thing to think about for Phoenix, by the way. Remy Cabral, Renzo Zambrano, John Michael Stenberg, much needed rest. They brought them off the bench, 2 out of 3 anyway. Cabral and Zambrano, when they came in, they were a much better team. So a full-strength Phoenix probably would have won that game if they went all 90.
All right, that's a brief look at the weekend. When we come back, potpourri, touch of the mailbag. It's next on USL All Access.
Giving insight to all the biggest moments in Championship and League One. This is USL All Access on SiriusXM FC with Mike Watts and Devon Kerr.
Welcome back, everybody, to USL All Access. We close out the week. A look at the mailbag to come and our favorite matchups, the round of 16 in the Open Cup. Before we get there, plenty of news to talk about. Buffalo, it will be 2026 that they jump to the championship. Some news out of the Super League. The Washington team, the Washington Post reporting they'll be playing in part out of Audi Field, home to DC United, home to the Washington Spirit. That's intriguing. Dallas' long-awaited Evan women's team, Super League side, announced their branding. They'll play out of the Cotton Bowl. Good friend of mine, Chris Petroselli. I love seeing him back in the pro game. He'll be the GM of that squad. That also came out last week as well. TST, Formiga is going to play for the Tampa Bay Sun, a Super League team that's one of the 8 playing for the million on the women's bracket. Love to see that. Also, League One, Westchester SC, not to be confused with Westchester United. Westchester United, different. This is the New York version, League One. That got announced. Also, Richmond Ivy in the W League kicked off this last week. City Stadium sold out 6,500 in the seats that were available for that. That's super cool. Also worth noting with Sporting Jacks coming in, Jacksonville is going to host West Ham and Wolves over the summer, part of that typical Premier League preseason tour. Dev, matchups in the round of 16 in the Open Cup are now a week away. Chance for us to pick a favorite. On Tuesday, I'll let you pick one of the 5. Battery Atlanta, NYCFC, and New Mexico. That'll be in New York. Sporting KC and Tulsa. That'll be at Sporting. Sacramento hosting San Jose. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. LAFC host Loudoun United.
Because, of course, regionally it makes the most sense, Mike.
Golly.
For me, it's Charleston, Atlanta. I don't even think it's close. In terms of like what the matchups give you, the history behind the two, people that don't know, Charleston Battery was basically the 2 team for Atlanta United, that they got all their players and then either A, before Atlanta started playing, loaned them there, including a Miles Robinson, I might add, or B, when Atlanta United first came into MLS, they led a pretty good relationship with the Charleston Battery. Charleston, as we mentioned earlier in the show, 10 games unbeaten. Let me give you the run-in real quick here. This will be the only game I talk about. I know we're tight on time. Charleston Battery only have to deal with Birmingham Legion on the weekend, and then they have another full week off. This is incredible scheduling, by the way, for Ben Pierman, Lee Cohen, and everybody in that front office. Atlanta United, who are 6 games winless in MLS play right now, including 3 losses, who, by the way, have only won 10 of their last 60 games away from the Mercedes-Benz. They have to go to FC Cincinnati. They have to go to Nashville. And then they have to go to the Charleston Battery. Ripe for the picking. We talked about coaches not wanting to lose their jobs because we want to see success. That seat is pretty hot for Gonzalo Pineda. That's 3 games in a row. Charleston Battery could be the dagger.
All right, meanwhile, Wednesday, Indy 11 in Detroit, the early game, only 3 games that day. The Rowdies host Dallas, and Seattle host Phoenix. Your favorite of the 3 is?
Rowdies Dallas, because they have the best opportunity. That Dallas team is also really struggling right now. Got one on the weekend over Austin, who had won 4 out of the last 5. Nico Estevez has a ton of talent on that team. But Jesus Ferreira just doesn't look the same, even though he just became the youngest goal scorer to 50 goals in the regular season in MLS history. They don't have any sort of rhythm about him, and I feel like the Rowdies have exactly that, minus that 10-man performance a couple of weeks back.
All right, usually I ask if we learned anything in this show. However, we didn't learn how to tell time. We ran long. For Devon, Mike, thanks for listening, watching. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday night, everyone. So long for now.
This is USL All Access. If you missed any portion of the program, listen back anytime on the SXM app.